Chloe Johnson with PCTV Reports, and today I'm down here at Higher Ground Learning in Salt Lake. We're going to chat with Jess Smiley. He is a comic book artist who comes down here to teach classes to kids who are interested in art and expressing their own comics in their own stories.
I make comics and books for children of all ages. This week I'm teaching a week-long comics workshop to ages 12 to 14. I've been making comics since 2012, and that's what I do. We're focusing on storytelling. We're focusing on having a clear message and using words and pictures that aren't confusing to the reader. So I've always drawn, like since I was little, and made up my own stories. Dad had comics growing up, Wonder Woman, Superman, all the mainstream stuff, X-Men. I think what I loved most was the Ninja Turtles comics, because they had all these cool abilities and powers, but also they didn't take themselves too seriously. So that was important for me, that accessibility, that humanity. And my first book came out in 2012, the end of 2012. And since then, I've kind of taken comics a little more seriously, and I've started thinking like, okay, that was fun. Now it looks like there's actually more to this, and kind of digging a little deeper and figuring out there's this whole, it's a language. These comics are a language, and so getting into that and like learning the language and speaking it with other people, and my whole goal now is to let's play a game together called comics. This is a goofy comic I made called Fantasy Quest. And every other page is a maze that the reader has to complete in order to get to the next part of the story. This one's called The Tunnel, and it's this tiny book I made out of one sheet of paper, both sides, and cut it up. And I thought, I wonder what kind of story I would tell if it's a really wide story when I open it up. And I thought, well, a tunnel, like they're going through a tunnel. So everything in here is these people going through this weird tunnel. It's kind of different from my other stuff. I think comics is still a word that people are still grappling with. Like, ooh, can I let my kids read this? Should we have these in schools? Should the library have these? And I'm trying to make those kinds of comics that I feel we should have around and that everyone should be reading. This is the first comic I ever made, and its sequel. It's called Upside Down Vampire Tale. It's kind of a goofy cartoon fairy tale. This is one I made with some buddies called The Donut's Tale, and it's the hero is a donut in like this medieval adventure. So really sophisticated stuff like that, you know. I worked on an Adventure Time comic, so people that like Adventure Time, you know, might want to check that out. And then my newest book just came out last week. It's called Let's Make Comics, and it's kind of, this actually came out of this class that I'm teaching this week. I was invited to teach kids how to make comics. I was just learning to make comics on my own. I didn't want to just lecture the whole time. I didn't want to give them assignments that they're supposed to get one thing out of it one way. So instead I came up with, I'll show you, activity pages. This one you're supposed to come up with a caption for each panel so the story makes sense. This one is missing words in the speech bubbles here. And so it only makes sense when you add words, and it's up to you whatever you want them to be. So this ends up being, we make a comic together. We play a game called comics, and it's let's make comics. So just make a comic. That's why, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's super accessible. If you have a pencil and paper or a digital tablet, you can just start drawing something, and you can write words. You can make a 4-panel comic about something that happened to you today. It's that easy. That's all it is.
Well, I think Jess pretty much captured my likeness here of our interview today. You can, of course, catch him at the Salt Lake Comic Convention that comes here. He'll be there showing his comics and happy to chat with anyone who wants to follow their own comic dreams. Thanks for chatting with us, Jess. We'll be right back in the studio with more PCTV reports.